Imagine you are in a table topic contest. Finding it difficult to imagine? We now observe 2 minutes silence for the judges to complete their ballots. Does that help? Master of ceremony, fellow Toastmasters, and my dear friends, for any contest, these 2 minutes are the deciding moment for that contest. You all agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
The judges put their head down, start writing. Everyone else in the room starts looking for the judges. And now it gets even more interesting for the table topic contest because the topic was same.
Yeah.
Everyone has spoken on the same topic. And now the judges have to find out the best speaker for the day. Interesting? I'll make it more interesting. In 2014, I was at a club level contest. And the topic given was slow and steady wins the race. What comes to your mind when I say slow and steady wins the race? Hair and tortoise. Hair, tortoise. Right? Rahul Dravid, okay. 6 contestants spoke about hair, tortoise. And there was only one contestant who took the opposite stand. For a moment, empathize with the tie-breaking judge. How will he rank 6 tortoise and 6 hair? Take a guess who was the winner for that day.
The 7th one.
Perfect. So the first tip for table topic contest, whenever you are the topic, think about it. It's not necessary to comply with the topic every single time. You can stand out. You can be different. And the speaker that day had spoken about no. It's not always slow and steady who wins the race. It's at times fast and furious who also win the race. And here's the reason behind it. Life is not just about slow things. It's also about emergency situations. And during emergency situations, if we start taking a decision, we start planning things and take our own sweet time, it doesn't help. Here's an example. If someone is having a cardiac arrest, you have to take that person, rush that person to the hospital. You cannot start some treatment over there itself. You have to rush him. You cannot say, okay, we'll take him tomorrow or day after. We'll plan first. Let's plan. Yeah. And hence I feel that it's not always slow and steady who wins the race, but it's also fast and furious. We need to be fast and furious at times. The contestant had got the trophy that day. He had taken an opposite stand. The good thing that I had loved about him that day was the technique that he had used, which I just used. He had used PREP technique, where P stands for point, R stands for reason, E stands for example, and P stands for point. So we circle back to the point. And how he had done that? He said the first P is point in PREP. So he said, I don't necessarily agree that every time slow and steady wins the race. At times, we need to be fast and furious. Point. Reason. Now it's not just, it's so easy to say, it's not always. You have to give a reason for it. So he said that life is not always about slow situations. There are also emergency situations that happen. And we have to be really on our toes and we have to take those decisions quickly. He had given that reason. Now he has to give an example. And that's where he went to the third. In PREP, the E stands for example. And he had given an example of a cardiac arrest. And he said when a patient is having a cardiac arrest, we don't sit there and say, okay, let's take him tomorrow day after. Let's plan which hospital we'll go tomorrow morning. And no. We take the action immediately. So it's fast and furious. And hence I feel that life is not always about slow and steady wins the race, but at that time we have to be fast and furious. You understood the first technique, which is PREP. Now, I mentioned that we need to stand out from the crowd, and one of the ways we do is by taking the opposite stand. Okay? And over here, you say no. Slow and steady does not win the race. For example, if the topic was everything that glitters is not gold, then we say not necessary. Or if the topic is a stitch in time saves 9, then we say no, stitch in time does not always save 9. But that's not sufficient, okay? Making point is very easy in life. It's very easy. You have to give a reason behind it. And you have to support it, complement it with an example. And then come back to the point. Okay, now, sitting over there, it's very easy to come up with the opposite thought. That everything that glitters is not gold. Or a stitch in time does not always save 9. But when we come over here, the tortoise and hare will come to us. It has to, right? It happens because there's so much. Now, how do we save our soul during those times? Okay, so here's the second part. The first one was stand out, be different. And second is use your personal anecdotes or the stories which you have heard. And over here, an example could be, I believe firmly, and this time I'm going to comply with the topic, okay? Slow and steady wins the race. I believe this because in life, it's not always that success is overnight. No. You have to work towards the success. There's a process behind it. There's time invested. Because if we become successful overnight, then we also lose that success overnight. Yeah. And an example over here is about a documentary, which is The Speaking Hand of Zakir Hussain. And Zakir Hussain was a small child and he was not yet an ustad. His father, Ustad Allah Rakha Khan, used to wake him up at 3 a.m. in the morning and make him practice. Make him practice. This 4-year child used to wake up, practice, practice, practice. He didn't know where it was heading. Today, he's 50 plus. When he's sitting and performing in an auditorium of 50,000 people, an open auditorium, the first strike that he gives on his percussion instrument, the tabla, he gets that applause from 50,000 people. Not all tabla players get that because he's a master now. He's an ustad. And it didn't happen overnight. It was a slow and steady race of life for Ustad Zakir Hussain, which has brought him where he is. And hence I feel slow and steady wins the race. Okay? So the second thing that I'm making is, the first is stand out, be different, take an opposite stand to it, don't comply with it. Second way you can do it is give your own stories or a story which you have heard, not in schools. We all went to schools. We have heard those stories. All of us. So give a story which you have read in life, okay? Which you have experienced. I explained to you about the prep technique. Now let's come to the second technique, which is pendulum. You all have understood the prep technique? Yes. Okay. Now, prep technique is used when you take one side of the story, okay? You take a stand. But at times the topic is so interesting that you feel like, hey, I have to speak on both the sides. An example is, should homework be banned? What do you think, man? No. Some. Okay, yeah, so here's the pendulum. Okay? So at times it's easy to speak on both the sides, yes and no. So use pendulum technique. And the way we'll do it is simple. Start with, on one hand. So pendulum technique you'll start with, on one hand, I firmly believe that homework should be banned. And use a prep technique over here. Okay? Now how will we use prep technique? Homework should be banned because children are already investing 8 hours in school. And the teachers are making sure that they are learning. The child is so happy over this. And again when they come back home, the time is not for the school. They have to invest it back in some cultural activities. They have to learn music. They have to learn something related to drama or something related to art, which does not happen. And here's an example. I'd gone to my friend's place one evening and I asked him, hey, where's your child? He said he's sitting up and he's completing his homework. Where's the mother? She's also completing the homework. So the child and the mother both were completing the homework. So it's not always helpful when the homework is given. Okay? Hence, I feel that homework should be banned. But on the other hand, now in pendulum approach we start with on one hand and then to continue on the other hand, I feel that some part of the education should be given back as an homework, as an activity, as a learning experience. Something that the student should apply and go back with the results. Because in earlier days, there was Gurukul system. Children used to stay with the Guru 24 hours. So they used to see the Guru, they used to see how he works, how he performs. They used to do it themselves. But today there is no Gurukul system. Hence the child comes back home. So where does the experiential learning happen? And hence, I feel that some part should be given as an homework wherein the children can experiment whatever they have learned and come back and share with their colleagues. So I covered both the parts, and then you have to sum it up by saying, so on one hand, I feel that the homework should be banned, but we should be giving some part as an activity so that the child learns on his own. That's the end of the topic. Now go for pendulum approach. Only when your words per minute is high, when you can speak really fast like Bharat. Don't try the pendulum approach if you speak slowly, if you tend to take those power pauses, because you will overshoot the time, because you have to use prep how many times? Twice. And what is prep?
Point, reason, example, point.
Perfect. So you got these two techniques. Okay. Now, I thought you wanted to ask some. So please avoid, make sure that hand is not going to where you're not adjusting your head. I thought you were asking a question. Okay, so now during Bharat's session, there were many hands which went up that you struggle to find topics. Can you show your hands please once again? You're struggling to find topics? Yeah. This contest is for you. Topic will be given to you. So all those hands which went up and you said that you struggle to find topics, go register for the table topics contest. Okay, so we have covered the two techniques over here. Any queries about the two techniques so far? So what did we learn? Prep, pendulum. And the tip is stand out, but for a reason. If you know what you're going to do, you have the example ready. Don't do it for the sake of it. What is the example of sake of it? So once Akbar called Birbal and he said, hey, you know what, Birbal, I want to see everyone in this kingdom who's not a henpecked husband, who does not always comply with his wife. He has his own conviction and he has his own thought process. Call for them. Let's see. So the next day morning, everyone came from the kingdom, and then the announcement was made. Everyone who is a henpecked husband, please stand on the right hand side. Sir. And those who are not henpecked, Mayank is looking at me. And those who are not henpecked husband, please stand on the left hand side. So the entire crowd went towards the right. Akbar was shocked, stumped and surprised. There's only one person. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. So he said, okay, that's a sorry situation, but at least we have some hope. One person. Let's hear it from him. Please give him a black horse as a gift. So Birbal says, sir, just a minute, Jahapana, let me just check. I said, it's really nice. You have your own thought process. You're not a handpicked husband and everyone was standing on the other side. So, what's the secret sauce? I said, nothing. I just came. While going, my wife had said, don't go where there is crowd. Stand out. She had said, stand out. Okay? And that's why I stood up. So don't stand out for the sake of it just because I said it over here. You have a good example. The moment you hear a topic, if you have a good example, only then stand out. And here's the third tip that I'm sharing today. How did I recall Zakir Hussein's example or Akbar and Birbal example? I see a lot of millennials today sitting in the room. The technique that I use is, I'm also a millennial. The technique I use is, okay, don't laugh. So the technique I use is hashtag. Whenever I read a story, I read a short story, humorous story or something, I do a hashtag. And in case of Zakir Hussain, the hashtag was hard work, hashtag persistence, hashtag slow and steady wins the race. When I read the Akbar and Birbal story, I said hashtag stand out. Hashtag the messages that you get on WhatsApp. It's easy to read it, but when you're standing in front of hundreds of people, if you have not done that indexing, you tend to forget. You will not. Once you go back and sit over there. So hashtag. Okay. So the 3 tips that we have learned is stand out, personal stories, anecdotes, or some stories which you have heard not in school but outside school, and third is hashtag. And the 2 techniques that we learned is PREP. PREP stands for, acronym which stands for
Point.
point, reason, example, point. And the second technique we learned was pendulum. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to all of you. And we'll be having the table topic session from a very close friend of mine, Toastmaster Aniket.